It's in North East Yorkshire, and we'll see where fairly shortly. Wade's Causeway is a site which I had heard of quite a long while before I ever went to visit it. In 1997, the REI held their summer meeting at Scarborough with Anthony Quiney. I've got this as well. How many mics do you need? In 1997, the REI visited Scarborough for the summer meeting with Anthony Quiney as the president, and I gave a lecture on the archaeology of North East Yorkshire, more or less from sort of prehistoric times through to Saxon times. It was a never mind the quality field of width lecture, and I was asked what I thought about Wade's Causeway at the time, and I had to admit that although I'd been up in the northeast for something like 12 years by then, I had never visited Wade's Causeway because it was a Roman road. So I obviously didn't need to be in a great hurry to visit Wade's Causeway. So I had to admit that I actually hadn't seen it, but that from what I had heard, I had one or two doubts about it being a Roman road. Anyway, actually I checked my diary the other day, and it was the weekend following that REI field summer meeting. I actually went out to Wade's Causeway for the first time. And Wade's Causeway is a very interesting lesson in how myths grow up and to some extent how wishful thinking is actually answered. This is the cover of British Archaeology, which fortuitously came out about a month or 2 months after September 1997. And that came out literally very soon after we'd been up to Scarborough. And there's a picture of it. The typical Roman road stretching off into the distance. And we have Frank Elgie's words, which are pretty typical of the words that are put forward about Wade's Causeway. Roman Whitby was linked with Malton and York by that wonderful paved road, Wade's Causeway, which has been uncovered on the Goathland and Wheeldale moors. Both the beginning and the end of the road are obscure. That's Frank Elgie. Now, when I read that the beginning and the end are obscure, my sort of eyebrows rise. I think, yes, I wonder. Wade's Causeway is in all the archaeology books about Roman Britain. It is supported, if you like, by antiquarian records which go back 200 years. It has that sort of gravitas about it. It's been known about for 200 years. It is ideally located, or at least the principal monument along Wade's Causeway is ideally located precisely on the line drawn by a ruler between Malton and Whitby. Now, anybody who knows North Yorkshire and the North Yorkshire moors knows that if you're interested in going in a straight line anywhere, you're not going to get very far very fast. So that, again, is a slight potential problem. But this is Warburton's, it's first mentioned in 1720 on Warburton's map. But this is a map that appears in Drake's Eberarchen, 1736. And you will see that there is Malton, that's right there, Malton, Pickering and Whitby there. And this line is remarkably straight there. So are quite a number of other suggested Roman roads. But that is the line which is seen as being the potential route of Wade's Causeway. From 1736, the theory of the idea of the road was taken up enthusiastically by Thomas Codrington, who predated Ivan Margaret by the best part of a century in enthusiastically following up all the potential Roman roads and several of the non-potential Roman roads in the country. So there was, of course, very little direct evidence for anything Roman along this route beyond the so-called Roman practice camps or forts at Cawthorne camps and a Roman fort at Lees Rig, which is halfway between Cawthorne and Whitby. And of course there is absolutely nothing, or virtually nothing, at Whitby itself. So very little behind this sort of developing story and idea of a Roman road at Wealdown or indeed anywhere else along that route. This map is the most recent, most recently published map. It's the map that accompanies Martin Millet's guide to Roman Aldborough, which is just there. And this shows you a map which is pretty similar to the one you saw in Covington's book. There it is, Malton there, and this is with the route from Malton, past Cawthorne Camp, past Lees Rig, and on to Whitby. Now, this is the only section which they see fit to put down as a potential Roman road. So, an obviously large gap between Malton and Cawthorne Camps there. So it's in northeast Yorkshire. Looking at the Roman background, this is an area where there was very little, as far as we know, tribal unrest. There was little antagonism to the Romans in this area. To be fair, there was very little in the way of a population. So it's not too surprising. The place where things did get warm was around Stank here and Catterick. This is the A1, but formerly it was Deer Street, the Roman road striking north up for Hadrian's Wall. This is a secondary road which appears to follow a slightly less direct route, but again effectively up the Vale of York, up again towards Hadrian's Wall. But when you move out into East Yorkshire, you'll see that Roman roads become pretty thin on the ground. But Wade's Causeway became a consolidated legend by the production of two books, one of which was Wade's Causeway by the indefatigable Raymond Hayes and by John Rutter, the curator of Scarborough Museum. It came out in 1964. And it was, if you like, further consolidated by its inclusion in Roman Roads in Britain, Ivan Margary's book, and his entry about Wade's Causeway. The continuation of the northeastern road from York beyond Malton seems to have run almost due south, etc., etc. It's all getting written down. The site itself is particularly well known because there's a stretch of a monument on Wealdown Moor, which is usually seen as being part of Wade's Causeway, which was taken into care by the Ministry of Works in about 1910. And it was, in a way, curated by a gamekeeper. He didn't seem to do much gamekeeping, but what he did do was a lot of peat digging. He removed all the peat from the surface of this feature, this stony feature, which extends for something like 1.5 miles over Wealdown Moor. So Patterson, his name was, I always remember that. Patterson took all the peat off this stony feature, and it's Patterson's revealed feature, which is put forward. It's always in photographs of Roman roads, and this is what a section of it looks like. For all the world, what some people think of it as a Roman road. It's unusual to see people walking along it, but it's not usual to see people visiting it, but it's unusual to see them walking along it because it's actually quite difficult to walk along, and in some areas it's almost impossible to walk along, but we'll come to that. Right, the road itself, the route itself, full of traps, the route itself runs for about 1 mile, going across the moor here. Most people think it finishes here. It doesn't. It comes through this header here and then makes a sharpish turn there. So this is the stretch of monument which was cleared of peat. You will see that there is actually a modern road in the vicinity. There is a network of modern roads, mostly narrow, but they do allow access around this part of the moors. This area is rough grazing. This is the area where Mr. Patterson took all the peat off. This area is not usually seen as part of the monument at all. It's usually ignored. And the only things that go on that area are sheep in quite large numbers, which is why that is sort of trampled black. The heather is trampled black. But the monument itself exists beneath this heather here. There is a notice board which tells you that it's a Roman road. There is a happy family disappearing off to explore the Roman road, and there is another happy family who are having a picnic down the bottom here, are now driving away. So it's actually surprisingly strongly Have you had a chance to read that caption? It's a lovely bit of field archaeology by Covington in 1903. He says, I lost it sometimes by the interpolation of valleys, rivulets, or the exceeding great quantity of ling growing on these moors. I had then nothing to do but to observe the line, and riding crossways, my horse's feet through the ling informed me when I was upon it. It's a nice little bit about how you'd actually find an earthwork when you can't see it. Your horse will find it for you. That's great. Right. Well, why is it a Roman road? Why has it stayed with that association? If you look at Hayes and Rutter's book, and actually also Ivan Margaret, you'll realise that there are three reasons why it is down as a Roman road. Firstly, all the descriptions employ a grammar which you would use if you were describing a Roman road. They always start off, we'll have a quick look at them, but it all describes as though it was a Roman road. I remember when I first went, Anthony having, or whoever it was, having goaded me into going to have a look at it, I went up there and I thought, well, what am I walking along? I thought, it's not a road. But I don't think anybody else has ever asked that. So the other thing is associated sites. Well, the associated sites are all very clear. Well, they are in a way. There is the Roman fort at Malton. There is the collection of earthworks that are called Cawthorne Camps, and there is the earthwork enclosure at Lees Rig. There is also, if you have the faith, there is the Roman harbour at Whitby, but you really do need faith for that. So, those I would put to you is why it is known as a Roman road. This is an interesting little slide. It shows you the Roman. Let's start at the south end of the south end of the surviving end of the Roman road, inverted commas. Put an inverted comma around most of those things, and you will see this is Hayes and Rutter's map of the route and the things along the route. There is Malton, there is Cawthorne, there is Lees Rig, and there is Whitby, there. And you will see that the line of the road is quite clear. It's marked in here, from here to Cawthorne. Only one thing wrong with that stretch, it's something like 8 miles and not a single piece of evidence for a Roman road on it. And then you have a nice solid line through here, from Cawthorne, up here, over Wheeldale Moor to Lees Rig. A solid line, well, you can't argue with that, can you? Well, you can. It's very hard to find very much of a Roman road along there as well. And then through here, well, there's some difficulty admittedly there because they haven't put anything there, but they have put a dotted line approaching Whitby rather more assuredly, for which there was no evidence whatsoever. Now, if you turn your attention to one of the typical strip maps that Hayes and Rutter provide in their biography of Wheeldale Moor, then you will see that, here we are, the route of the Roman road is shown on the strip maps by the use of the following signs. A solid thick line indicating that the course is certain. Well, where's a solid thick line here? Well, the only place there's a solid thick line is actually running through the Cawthorne camps themselves. And that line is almost certainly the line of a medieval road rather than a Roman road. And if it is a Roman road, you'll notice that its course is actually more or less west to east, not north-south, which is where the line from Malton up through Cawthorne camps would take you. So there's something dodgy about that. If you look for a broken thick line indicating that the course is almost certain but has not been proved, I quite see how a line can be almost certain but not quite certain. And then the dotted line indicating an inferred course. Well, here we are, there's a dotted line, an inferred course. The actual line of the road being completely unknown. So, you see, when you actually start to look at the truth or otherwise of this, it looks a bit iffy. Now, sticking with the south end of the Wheeldale Monument, which is just about 7 miles north of Cawthorne Camps, this is This is the monument which survives on Wheeldale Moor. This is the monument which is called Way's Causeway. It's approached through country which admittedly has been improved. It's been subject to enclosure and agricultural improvement. And Hayes and Rutter gathered all sorts of stories of stones having been found here and snatches of gravel being found there. It's been robbed away, a repeated phrase. When you actually look at the evidence on the ground, this is the monument coming up off Wheeldale Moor. That photograph that I showed you runs through here and down here, and then what? Well, let's have a look at Google Earth and see if that helps us. Here it is. The monument comes down here, crosses the modern road, comes down here, and then it turns sharply this way. And there is no trace of it through here. So it's something very odd indeed. Now, Royal Commission did a survey of the Wheeldale Moor monument about 20 years ago, something like that, and they plotted it through here, cuts over, crosses this beck, cuts through here, and then they couldn't quite bring themselves to bend it round. They sort of clung to the idea that somehow it went on. They couldn't reject the idea. You can see that it was like, I don't know, like a drug addict or something. Oh look, it must go there, mustn't it? Oh yeah, draw it in, put a few hashes, yeah, it must go there. Well, it doesn't go there. It goes here, and it stops at the stream, there. So this is all a bit odd for a Roman road. For a start, it makes two crossings of streams, admittedly in a very difficult place, but it makes two crossings of streams within about 150 yards. And this area is prone to flooding, very prone to flooding, because you've got two streams coming in from here, you've got another one here, which incidentally flows, it's shown flowing the wrong way. It should flow down there. So there are two crossings in such a short length here. This is all very, very odd. And then when you look at the next anchoring point for the so-called Roman road, you find that it's at Lees Rig. Lees Rig is an odd, you could call it a fort, can't you think? Is it a fort? It's a fort with a little bit of an annex there, and you can see it has got a pretty typical Roman layout. It's got an entrance break there, an entrance break there, with a road going between them, there. And all the buildings are orientated the way that you would expect within a Roman enclosure. So this is the drawing that's provided in the Lees Rig report by Fitz, but he also provides us this drawing, which is the one that Raymond Hayes and Rutter provide, which shows the undoubted line of the road. What's it? I can't read it from here. It's the
modern road construction, course of Roman road.
Yeah, modern road construction, course of Roman road. Well, how can it be the course of a Roman road when excavation has already shown you that the course of the Roman road goes like that? It doesn't make sense. So the more you look, you want to think, well, what is it? Well, you're not helped, of course, by the way in which Way's Causeway or Wheeldale Roman Road has been described. And I do like this. This is from Margarine. The removal of vegetation provides convenient foot tracks. Now that makes you a bit suspicious, doesn't it? For visitors. For the actual stones of the road are now very rough and irregular, being, no doubt, only the foundation layer upon which finer material was placed, now long since washed away. So it doesn't look much like a road, but obviously it did once. Well, okay, maybe. In this respect, the appearance of the road is misleading. Note the road, for it is certain that a much smoother surface was provided. Well, I'm not quite sure where the certainty comes from. You often read that the surface was robbed away from Wheeldale Moor, this monument. Wheeldale Moor is so isolated there is no mains electricity there. There is no one there to steal any road surface. At some points, small culverts passed under the road for drainage, and the cover stones remained in position in some cases, although unfortunately much damage was done to them by tanks during the war. This paragraph wraps up a couple of very nice old chestnuts Firstly, the idea that anything on the moors was trashed by tanks in World War II. And it's amazing how many sites were trashed by tanks in World War II. And really, I found very little evidence that they really were. Secondly, culverts. Remember our old pal, Mr. Patterson? Mr. Patterson had taken something like 5 inches of peat off the monument, and in doing so, he took the peat off the top of the monument and extended the removal of the peat for about a metre either side of the monument. That immediately created 2 ditches along which water ran. So in creating 2 ditches and encouraging the water to run either side, the water on the uphill side of the monument pooled up against it. And so there was a necessity immediately for culverts to be built to drain the road, to drain the ditch. These culverts are not Roman. They are at surface level. If they were Roman, they would have some surfacing over them. They'd be at a level which took the water away. They're not. They're very shallow, very tatty, and we'll see a couple of examples. So the whole pabulum starts to fade away. This map, you're going to point out to me, is actually a railway map. I am aware of that. The point about the moors is that you are looking at a heavily dissected area of upland. It is not the Vale of York. In the Vale of York, you could have, this is the East Coast Main Railway line, but it's more or less mirroring the A1. The A1 that goes straight up the Vale of York in a remarkably straight line, because it could. And there are supporting roads as well, as we'll see from those other maps. But when you move into the area that we're talking about, this is here, you'll see the way in which the railways, because they follow the same rules that Roman roads follow, their railways hardly exist, and where they do exist, they follow extremely winding tracks. So the same principles apply to the Roman roads. Whereas in the Vale of York, you could have a well-engineered, and you could have a well-engineered Roman road there, nicely made. Note the agger, note the surface, note the foundation, note the alignment. All these words which are used to describe the Wheeldale Monument apply to this chunk of Roman road at Scotch Corner, which was excavated 4 or 5 years ago there. But it can't possibly apply to this area of Yorkshire here, where, for a start, not only is the topography very different, and you cannot have a real straight Roman road, but the other thing to bear in mind is that this is an underpopulated area with a very small native population, which almost certainly was not particularly antagonistic or in a position to be antagonistic to Romans. So if you needed to get around, and if you were a Roman soldier or an army unit, you needed to get around from Malton up to Cawthorne Camps and then up to Leesrig, you would use the existing network of roads, because the farms use a network of roads. I think I've got the next slide, which, oh no, it doesn't, but we'll get back to it. The farms use a network of roads, and those would have been available for the Romans, and there would not have been the need for the expenditure on building a road to get you into and across the moors. The other thing to look at, I've already mentioned the watercourse issues, the way in which the ditches are almost certainly a modern construction, that the culverts are a modern construction. After that, you're left wondering what the other watercourse crossings are. And they are 3 in character, none of which are particularly Roman in kind. There are 7 places where water crosses, and water crosses, the monument is actually discontinued. There's a break. So you get a water course where water is coming down the slope and it's crossing this monument, and we'll see a little bit of the detail of that. It crosses the monument, and there's a clean break. No trace of any bridge, no trace of any culvert or ford. There are lower crossings, which again I believe are ancient, and those are places where the monument is continued, but there's only one layer of stones, or only one very shallow layer of stones. And I believe those are ancient crossing places, or at least ancient places where the monument continues, but is lowered to allow water across it. And then there are a couple of reduced crossings, which I think are probably medieval attempts at drainage. So there's something very funny about water use. This is a culvert, and this is one which our old friends the Tanks has chewed up. It's one which was almost certainly put in by Patterson. We don't have much information about what was done. He cleared the peat, but I think that because it was supposed to be a Roman road, he spent quite a lot of time making it look a lot more Roman. So there are areas where the curbing, inverted commas, I use the word advisory, the curbing or the edging has been replaced or renewed. There are areas where the culverts have been rebuilt, or culverts have been built and then rebuilt. And there are areas where there are flattened slabs which make up what goes to the surface, which have clearly been replaced. And they've been repaired even in recent years. The National Park employs the occasional archaeological contractor to go out there and make it look a bit more Roman. Right, associated sites. Well, I mentioned Cawthorne Camps, Lease Rig, Malton. What other associated sites are there? You remember all those dots on Raymond Hayes' map. Well, I don't like to tell you this, but there are virtually no associated sites of Roman date. There is nothing there. There are occasional finds of pottery from the wider area. If you look at the strip of countryside about 15 or 20 miles wide, which Raymond Hayes plotted on his map, there are no associated sites. No Romans in sight anyway. One associated site is a group of 5 stone kists, and this is one of them. This is a stone kist set into the side of the monument. A very odd thing to find in a Roman road. But only one of them now survives. But you can find that quite easily, and it doesn't strike you as Roman when you see it. Right. Well, where were the Romans and when? Well, they were at Malton Fort for a start. In use, I'm assured by my Roman specialist, from around about 70 AD until sometime after AD 120, or even quite a lot longer, Pete?
Basically
through the Roman period. So from 80 onwards to through the end of the Roman period. Intermittent use, this is Malton, extensive use. Cawthorne Camps, the 4 Roman camps, varying design. They are located on a steep escarpment on the edge of the moors, about 12 miles north of Malton, and in use from round about AD 80 to around about 120, but intermittently only. And then Lease Rig, again, a very similar story, limited pottery assemblages, intermittent occupation. And then Whitby, a potential supply base for Lease Rig or even Cawthorne Camps, but almost no evidence for Roman activity whatsoever. I think there's a few sherds of pottery and 1 Roman coin, something like that. But this is not a strong background of Roman military activity, and one suspects very strongly that Roman activity may well have been confined to the odd labour party sent out after a hard week's carousing in York and overdoing it, and being sent out to Cawthorne Camps to work it off. It doesn't seem to be part of the mainspring of Roman military advance into the north of England or Scotland. Right, as I said, if this wasn't a Roman road, how were the Romans getting about on their occasional visits? Well, they used the network of roads which the natives already had established. In the Vale of York, we know that we've got Iron Age farmsteads, native farmsteads there, linked by tracks, which link them to neighbours and to markets. So there is an extensive network of roads before the Romans arrive in anywhere in Britain, actually, because once people have an increasing population, they develop specialisms, they are in the business of getting about and travelling about, and meeting people and selling things. And this is a pretty good example of a Cropmark Iron Age farmstead in the Vale of York, near Scotch Corner actually, which has the crop marks of a trackway, double-ditch trackway, extending from it there. So these roads exist in the lowlands, they also existed in the uplands, but of course you don't get crop marks. So this is a good example of a road just up the road from the Wheeldale Moor. There you are, you can see it there, and it drops down into the valley there and back out there. But you'll also see that there are the earthworks of numerous other attempts at tracks or episodes of track dropping down into that valley and coming back out here. So these can be seen all over the moors, and they almost certainly go back, many of them, at least to Iron Age times. Right, so what can you say about Wheeldale Roman Road? There is no evidence for an engineered Roman road linking Malton with Cawthorne Camps, at least Rigg or Whitby. There is no evidence that the Roman establishments at Cawthorne or Least Rigg would have required an engineered road, even if topography had allowed that. The claimed Roman road on Wheeldale Moor does not exhibit Roman construction methods, nor is there any evidence of such construction anywhere else along the alignment. That's the point, that you have got a monument on Wheeldale Moor, but there is nothing else like it anywhere else along this so-called route. And there would have been little or no economic or military justification for the Romans to build a proper road. So that's a conclusion, but before you stand up, I just would like to look a little bit further to what Wade's Causeway might actually be. This is what we're actually left with. When you actually look at the evidence and you say, well, what is there? There is no evidence for a Roman road anywhere between Malton and Cawthorne. That doesn't mean to say that there wasn't a Roman road, or that there wasn't a network of roads which allowed you to get there. It's just that it wasn't running in a dead straight line up to Cawthorne. And then from Cawthorne northwards, the same can be said. Yes, it may well have been a Roman route up there, but it wasn't going along the way that people with a ruler think it did. So, and beyond Wheeldale, the same. There's a network of roads, doubtless, but it is not an engineered road. It's not going in a straight line. So what are we left with? We're left with a monument 1.5 miles long on Wheeldale Moor, just there. Right, well, this is an interesting picture because this is another volume of another number of British archaeology, which is called upon Mick Sharp's photo library yet again for a picture of the Roman road over Wheeldale Moor. Now, the interesting thing is that, I'll show you a photograph in a minute or two, when you go to Wheeldale Moor, you will see this stretch of monument, which you can cajole yourself into thinking is a Roman road. If you continue your walk along here and up here, through that gateway there, you come onto a slope here, where the Wheeldale Roman Road continues, except it's a bit of the Wheeldale Roman Road that never gets published as an example of an archetypal Roman road. Now, why can that be? Well, possibly because some of these boulders stand something like 75 centimetres high above the surface. And if you are going to claim that the Roman road surface has been robbed away, you've got to explain how it is that such a large quantity of stone could have been robbed away, and by whom. And when you look at this in a bit more detail, you start to think, well, is there a flat surface here anywhere? Is there not maybe 1 or 2 banks here instead? It starts to look very puzzling indeed, and not very Roman. So, and this map shows you exactly what I mean. This shows you the monument. It comes from here, and I say it comes from here because there's no evidence that it goes any further. It starts here on Wheeldale Moor, climbs this hill, this is that rocky bit through here, and goes through the gateway in the field there, and makes its way across here. This is the bit that you can be forgiven for thinking might be a Roman road. And then it comes down here, crosses the modern road, comes down here, and then makes a sharp turn here to stop at the Wheeldale Beck Valley there. And that is it there. You see it stops there, runs across here, It's now marked as a public footpath. That's a footpath that's developed only since 1920 or something like that, Mr. Patterson's activities. And so that's what we're looking at. And that is what I prefer to call the Wheeldale Monument. There. What is it? Well, about 5 winters ago, in a particularly hard stretch of weather, the National Park persuaded me to go and have a look at a section of this, and we put a section across it, and this is the upper, if you like to call it a surface, it is the upper surface of the monument that crosses Wheeldale Moor. It's got a bit of a curve, or you might call a curve or an edge, let's call it an edge, and keep away from roads altogether. That's an edge there, and there is a scatter or spread of stone. You'd be hard pressed to call it metalling, and you'd be hard pressed to call it paving, and it runs across to a less well-defined edge on this side. Looking at it, I am tempted to see two builds here, a narrow build here with an edge to it there, and a build here with rather larger stones. You may or may not agree with me, but it seems to me you're looking at a surface of two characters. But you don't have to believe, that's just something I would put forward to you. And then this is what it looks like in section. And it doesn't look awfully like a road in section either. There is the upper stones, but there's only one layer of stones, and it's put upon a layer of rather clayey, sandy rubbish, really. If you tried to ride a horse along it, or if you tried to pull a cart along it, it wouldn't last. I mean, if it was raining, it wouldn't last more than about an hour. So it's distinctly odd, and it's very, you'll notice it's very shallow. It has no great height. So whatever this monument is on Wheeldale Moor, in places it doesn't have much height at all. In others, it does have a bit. So it raises more questions than it answers. Right. Well, I did mention earlier on the way in which this is an area of extreme water aggregation. It's the meeting place of three becks. It can get flooded very easily. It's not where you put a Roman road. There are crossings at various periods, and I've argued that a number of them are ancient, and the others are pretty modern. This is one of the ones which I suspect may be medieval, or at least refurbished in the medieval period, and it's where the Rutmore Beck, which comes in through here, actually flows through the line of the monument, and you'll see it's actually edged with stones, as though it revetted the bank which at one time was running away there. So something very odd going on there, but somebody has done something, who knows when, possibly medieval period. This is an interesting feature. This is one of the old watercourses that crosses the Wheeldale Monument. And there's something very odd about it, because the monument approaches, and then it's not very high, but then it actually rises, it rears up there. And the same happens this side, you see, which this is actually quite a mound. So it actually rears up there. It's not doing anything you'd expect a road to do. It's actually making it more likely that you're going to get bogged down in the middle. It's not doing what it should do. And that is confirmed, if you like, by this drone picture which Tony Hunt gave me, where he did it's a LiDAR survey, isn't it? Yes, I think it's a LiDAR survey. He did a survey here. This is along the monument there, and you'll see you've got the bank rising, dropping down into the crossing, and then rising again, and you'll see it's dropping off again. So this is confirmed by survey work, and it's also this is another view of it. This is a lowered crossing here. This is the monument going away. Stony surface, but not a good stony surface, and lowered to allow water across, I think. Now, the lowering might easily be Patterson period. It could be because you're getting water building up in these side ditches, and it may well be that it's actually lowered by the Ministry of Works rather than by anybody else. But it's been lowered, and it appears to be lowered to allow water crossing. and the same applies on that one as well. And that one has actually been utilised by a more recent culvert there. So lots of things are going on there, and none of them are particularly clear. Well, when you look at the drawn sections, and Hayes and Rutter provide a number of drawn sections here, and you'll see you've got the same feature. This is not a nice cambered surface. This is actually a sloping surface. It falls from one side to the other, and there is an indication of a double bank there, not just a single bank. So it doesn't look like any Roman road that I've ever seen, and it looks much more like some kind of bank or boundary bank, and you get the same feature revealed and confirmed by Tony Hunt's drone picture there, which has got this profile here going across it, there, pronounced dip slope downhill. So that brings us back to this monument and the northern end of the monument and this improbable surface here, and you can see the way in which there does indeed seem to be a couple of parallel rows of stone which have been thrown down and don't look like any road surface, either medieval or Roman. And we've got again the same, on that same stretch, this multiple banking there for this stretch north of the field wall. And this is a family I encountered when I was out there looking at this feature, and I said, "What have you been walking along?" And they said, "Well, it sure as hell is no road." I was quite impressed with their archaeological interpretation, actually. I said, "Yes, I think you're quite right." This is the line of the Wheeldale Monument. It only really runs from there and runs out here. In other words, it runs out on the stream valley, the edge of the stream valley here, and it runs out on the stream here. And it appears to be defining an edge which is otherwise defined by the watercourse. This is the Rutmore Beck. So it's behaving in the same way as a lot of other boundary banks on the North York Moors. It appears to be using a built construction, in this case a very shallow stone-shod bank, to continue the definition of an area which is otherwise defined by a stream. So I think that the Wheeldale Roman Road is actually in this area a territorial boundary. Thank you very much.